What happens when a man known for speaking softly, choosing his words like a chess player, walks into a studio built for loud opinions and fast judgments, and decides he will not raise his voice, no matter how sharp the questions become? What happens when calm meets confrontation, when silence weighs heavier than accusation, and when a single pause on live television feels louder than a shout? Before we go any further, if you love cinematic, intense stories like this, hit subscribe to the Narration Show right now. Like this video, drop a comment, and stay with us for stories that don't just tell you what happened, they make you feel it. The studio lights of The View burn warm and unforgiving, washing the stage in polished brightness. Applause rises on cue as Johnny Depp steps out, dressed simply, dark jacket, open collar, rings glinting under the lights. No theatrical entrance. No wave to the crowd. Just a small nod, a half smile. The posture of someone who has learned how to stand still while storms pass through him. He takes his seat, folding his hands loosely in his lap. From the outside, he looks relaxed. From the inside, something tighter coils. Years of headlines. Courtrooms. Hashtags. Judgment passed by people who never looked him in the eye. He knows this chair. He knows this moment. Interviews are never just interviews anymore. Across the table, Sunny Hostin watches him closely. Her notes are stacked neatly, pen resting between her fingers like an exclamation point waiting to be placed. She smiles, but it doesn't quite reach her eyes. This isn't hostility, not yet. It's intent. The audience settles. The opening pleasantries glide by. Projects, art, music, gratitude. Johnny answers with courtesy, his voice low, steady, almost gentle. He speaks about creativity like it's oxygen, about finding peace in painting and music. A few laughs ripple through the crowd. For a moment, it feels safe. Then Sunny leans forward just slightly. "So, Johnny," she begins, measured, calm. "A lot of people are watching you right now. Not because of a movie, but because of everything that's happened. And some of those people feel conflicted." The air changes. It's subtle, but immediate. The kind of shift you feel before thunder. Johnny nods slowly. "That's understandable." Sunny continues. "There are those who believe your return to the spotlight sends a message. That accountability can be optional. That if you're famous enough, you can outlast the consequences." A murmur moves through the audience. Johnny doesn't interrupt. He doesn't blink fast. He lets the words land. Inside him, memories stir, courtroom benches, microphones shoved too close, strangers deciding who he is. He exhales quietly before answering. "I don't believe accountability is optional," he says. His voice is calm, almost soft. "I believe truth is complicated. And I believe living through something doesn't always look the way people expect it to." Sunny's eyes sharpen, not angry, but focused. "But victims," she says, carefully emphasizing the word, "often say that powerful men get to rewrite narratives. That public sympathy becomes a shield." The word shield hangs there. Johnny tilts his head slightly, considering. He doesn't rush. Silence stretches, 1 second, 2. The audience leans in. "I've never felt shielded," he replies. "I've felt dissected, studied, turned into a headline that kept changing depending on who was telling it." A few people clap. It's quickly hushed. Sunny nods once, acknowledging the response, but presses on. "Yet you're here. Promoted. Applauded. Doesn't that feel like redemption without reflection?" For the first time, something flickers across Johnny's face. Not anger. Fatigue. The kind that sits behind the eyes. "Reflection," he says quietly, "isn't something you perform for an audience." The crowd reacts, an audible "oh," followed by scattered applause. Sunny sits back slightly. "So you don't think public figures owe the public an explanation?" Johnny meets her gaze directly now. His voice doesn't rise. It sharpens. "I think public figures owe the public honesty," he says. "But I don't think trauma owes anyone a timeline." The studio goes still. Even the cameras seem to pause, hovering closer, catching the tension in the space between them. Sunny inhales, then exhales through her nose, a practiced reset. "But when your story influences culture," she says, "doesn't silence also speak?" Johnny nods slowly. "It does," he agrees. "And sometimes it says, 'I survived something I don't wish to relive out loud.'" A woman in the audience wipes at her eye. Another shakes her head. The reaction split the room cleanly down the middle. Johnny feels it, that familiar pull. The desire to explain everything. To defend. To justify. But he stays still. Calm voice. Sharp words. I'm not here to be absolved, he adds. I'm here to work, to create, and to exist without having to bleed publicly every time I walk into a room. Sunny's pen taps once against her notes. And what about the people who say your calm feels calculated? She asks. That softness can be a strategy. Johnny almost smiles. Not amused, recognizing. If calm is a strategy, he says, it's one I learned after realizing anger never helped me tell the truth. The audience erupts, applause louder now, led with tension, not celebration. Sunny holds her expression, professional, composed, but there's a crack now, a shift from interviewer to challenger. The conversation has crossed its invisible line. Johnny sits back slightly, hands still folded. He knows this is no longer about a film or a comeback. This is about perception, about who gets believed, about whether quiet strength is allowed to exist in a world addicted to noise. And as the cameras roll on, one thing becomes clear. This isn't going to explode with shouting. It's going to cut slowly, carefully, with words chosen like blades. And the sharpest part hasn't even been said yet. The applause fades, but the tension doesn't. It lingers in the studio like heat after a lightning strike, invisible yet impossible to ignore. Johnny shifts slightly in his chair, not to escape the moment, but to settle deeper into it. He has learned that discomfort doesn't disappear when you run from it. It only grows teeth. Sunny studies him for a beat longer than necessary. There's a calculation behind her eyes now. This isn't about catching him off guard anymore. This is about pushing past the cam, testing whether it's real or rehearsed. You talk about truth being complicated, she says, her voice steady but firm. But for many watching, it's not complicated at all. They see power, gender, fame. They see patterns. Johnny nods once. Patterns are easier than people, he replies. A ripple moves through the audience, some murmurs of agreement, others bristling at the implication. Sunny straightens. But patterns exist for a reason, she counters. Because they repeat. Johnny exhales through his nose, slow and controlled. And sometimes, he says, they repeat because we stop listening once we think we already know the ending. The camera cuts to a close-up of his face. There's no smirk, no challenge, just a quiet certainty that unsettles more than arrogance ever could. Sunny leans forward again. Let me be direct, she says. Do you believe the public owes you understanding? Johnny doesn't answer immediately. His eyes drop briefly to his hands, rings catching the light, then lift back to hers. No, he says. I believe the public owes itself curiosity, and I owe myself survival. That word, survival, lands heavy. Someone in the audience whispers, wow. Another scoffs. The split deepens. Sunny presses her lips together. Some would say survival doesn't erase harm. Johnny's jaw tightens just enough to be visible. I've never said it does. The room holds its breath. I've said, he continues, voice still low, that harm isn't a headline. And healing isn't linear. And pretending any of this fits neatly into a segment before commercial is unrealistic. Sunny's eyebrows lift. So this format isn't fair. Johnny allows a faint smile, not unkind. I think fairness left the building a long time ago. Laughter breaks out, nervous, scattered. Sunny doesn't laugh. She tilts her head. Then why come here? She asks. Johnny's answer is immediate. Because silence gets interpreted anyway. That hits harder than anything else is said. The co-hosts shift in their seats. One glances toward the producer's table. This isn't going the way anyone planned. This is no longer a safe, polished exchange. It's raw, philosophical, and uncomfortable. Sunny flips a page on her notes. You've spoken about being misunderstood, she says. But there are women watching who feel men like you always get the benefit of nuance, while they get disbelief. Johnny's eyes soften, but his voice doesn't waver. I don't dismiss that pain, he says. I would never tell anyone their experience isn't real. Yet, Sunny interjects, many feel you did exactly that. Johnny pauses. This time, the silence stretches longer. 3 seconds. 4. I defended myself, he says finally. There's a difference. A man in the audience claps once, loud. A woman immediately shakes her head no. Sunny folds her hands together. Defending yourself publicly, she says, can look like attacking someone else. Johnny nods. And being accused publicly, he replies, can feel like being erased. The words hang between them, sharp and unresolved. The camera cuts to Sunny. Her composure remains intact, but her tone shifts, less prosecutorial, more personal. Do you understand, she asks, why people struggle to see you as the wounded one? Johnny meets her gaze without flinching. Yes, he says, because I don't look wounded the way they expect. The audience goes quiet again. I learned, he continues, that if you bleed too much, you're dramatic. If you bleed too little, you're lying. There's no correct amount. Sunny blinks. For the first time, she seems momentarily unsure how to respond. But you're a storyteller, she says instead. You understand narrative. You understand how perception works. Johnny nods. That's why I choose my words carefully. And that, Sunny says, is exactly why some people don't trust them. Johnny lets out a small, humorless chuckle. Trust, he says, isn't something I can negotiate on television. A low murmur ripples through the studio. Sunny sits back, crossing her legs. So what do you want from this moment? She asks. If not forgiveness, not validation, what is this? Johnny looks out toward the audience now. Faces staring back at him, some sympathetic, some skeptical, some undecided. He takes them all in. I want, he says slowly, to be allowed complexity. He turns back to Sunny. People are messy. Stories are messy. And reducing anyone to hero or villain doesn't protect truth, it replaces it. The audience reacts, applause louder now, but still divided. Sunny nods slowly. Complexity, she repeats. That's a luxury many don't feel they are given. Johnny doesn't argue. I know. Another pause. The producers are likely sweating now. This isn't explosive television. It's something more dangerous. It's thoughtful. It forces the audience to sit with discomfort instead of cheering a winner. Sunny glances at the clock, then back at Johnny. When this show ends, she says, the conversation won't. Headlines will twist this. Clips will be cut. Johnny smiles faintly. They always are. And you're okay with that? He shrugs slightly. I've stopped expecting control. The audience senses it, that strange shift where neither side is winning, yet something important is happening. Sunny takes a breath. One last thing before the break, she says. If you could say one thing to those who believe your calm is dangerous, what would it be? Johnny doesn't hesitate this time. I'd say, he replies, that loud doesn't equal honest. And calm doesn't equal guilty. Sometimes it just means someone learned how to breathe while the room was on fire. The studio erupts, not cheers exactly, but reaction. Emotion. Debate spilling into sound. As the cameras pull back and the music cues faintly in the background, Johnny remains seated, composed, while Sunny watches him with an expression that's no longer confrontational, but contemplative. This isn't over. Not in the studio. Not online. And certainly not in the minds of everyone watching. The music fades as the show returns from commercial, but the mood doesn't reset. If anything, it sharpens. The audience knows now that this isn't a segment they'll forget by the end of the day. Phones are already tucked discreetly between knees, thumbs hovering, ready to clip, caption, and send moments into the wild. Johnny sits exactly where he was before the break, posture unchanged, as if movement itself might disturb the fragile balance he's holding. Calm has become his armor, but armor still carries weight. Sunny adjusts in her seat, glancing briefly at the other hosts before turning back to him. Her voice is steady, but something underneath it has shifted. Less courtroom, more crossroads. Johnny, she says, you've talked about complexity, about survival. But there are people who say those words are a way of avoiding responsibility. The audience quiets again. This time, it's not anticipation, it's tension fatigue. Everyone knows the ground is thin here. Johnny nods slowly. I've heard that, he says. Sunny continues. They say accountability means sitting in the discomfort of what others feel, not just what you feel. Johnny's fingers tighten together for the first time. Just a little. I agree, he replies. Accountability requires discomfort. Then why, Sunny asks, do some feel you stepped around it instead of into it? Johnny's eyes lift toward the studio lights, then back to her. Because my discomfort didn't look the way they wanted, he says. Because I didn't perform remorse on cue. A murmur moves through the audience. Someone whispers, that's true, while someone else mutters, or convenient. Sunny doesn't interrupt. She lets the contradiction exist. But remorse, she says, isn't performance. It's recognition. Johnny leans forward now, elbows resting lightly on his knees. It's the first real shift in his body language. The calm remains, but the distance closes. Recognition, he says quietly, is internal before it's external. And I've spent years recognizing things about myself I never wanted to see. Sunny studies him. Such as, Johnny hesitates. Not long, but long enough. That staying silent too long can feel like cruelty, he says. And speaking too much can feel like violence. The room goes still. That I trusted the wrong people, he continues. That I ignored red flags because I wanted peace more than clarity. Sunny's expression softens, almost despite herself. And that, he adds, fame magnifies every mistake until it becomes your name. Applause breaks out, stronger this time, more unified. Even some who were skeptical lean forward, listening harder now. Sunny nods. Do you believe, she asks, that your story has overshadowed broader conversations about abuse and power? Johnny doesn't dodge it. Yes, he says. And that bothers me. The audience reacts, a surprised ripple. It was never my intention, he continues. But I understand how my presence can redirect attention. And that's something I carry. Sunny presses gently. Then how do you reconcile that with continuing to take up space? Johnny exhales, a sound picked up by the MIC by trying to use space responsibly, he says. By not pretending my experience erases anyone else's. The co-hosts exchange glances. This is no longer adversarial television. It's a live negotiation of meaning. Sunny folds her arms loosely. Some would argue, she says, that stepping back would be more responsible. Johnny nods. I've done that, he says. For years. The weight of that lands heavy. And I learned, he adds, that disappearing doesn't heal the conversation. It just leaves it to be shaped by the loudest voices. Sunny looks down at her notes, then sets them aside. When she looks back up, her tone is different, less pointed, more searching. Do you think, she asks, this conversation would be different if you were angrier? Johnny almost smiles. Probably, he says. Anger is easier to package. The audience laughs softly, relief laughter. But anger, he continues, wouldn't be honest. And honesty, for me, looks like restraint. Sunny nods slowly. Restraint can feel threatening to people who expect spectacle. Johnny meets her eyes. Exactly. A beat passes. The tension hasn't vanished, but it's transformed. It's no longer a standoff. It's a tightrope. Sunny takes a breath. I want to ask you something difficult, she says. And I want an honest answer. Johnny inclines his head. That's all I've got. She holds his gaze. Do you believe you were ever wrong? The audience gasps quietly. This is the question. Johnny doesn't answer right away. His jaw tightens, then relaxes. Yes, he says. A collective intake of breath. I was wrong, he continues, about how long I thought I could endure without speaking. I was wrong about thinking truth would eventually surface on its own. And I was wrong to believe that pain, mine or anyone else's, would remain contained. Sunny listens, eyes fixed on him. But, he adds carefully, being wrong doesn't mean being false. And being accused doesn't mean being defined. Applause rises again, measured, respectful. Sunny nods. That distinction matters. Johnny leans back, the forward intensity easing slightly. I hope so, he says. Because if we erase that distinction, we leave no room for growth, only verdicts. The audience murmurs in agreement and dissent alike. The divide remains, but it's thinking now, not just reacting. Sunny glances toward the camera. This conversation, she says, isn't comfortable. And it's not resolved. Johnny follows her gaze. Most important ones aren't. The studio feels heavier now, not with conflict, but with consequence. Everyone senses the end approaching, but not the closure. Sunny turns back to Johnny for one final exchange before the segment wraps. When people watch this back, she says, they'll choose what to hear. What do you hope they don't miss? Johnny doesn't hesitate. That calm, he says, isn't absence of emotion. It's the result of surviving too much of it. The audience rises into applause, not thunderous, but sustained. Thoughtful. And as the cameras begin to pull away, it becomes clear, whatever happens next, this moment won't disappear quietly. It's already on its way to becoming something else entirely. The applause lingers longer than usual as the cameras drift back for the final moments. It isn't celebration. It's release. The kind that comes after holding your breath for too long. Johnny remains seated, hands resting calmly now, but the stillness around him feels charged, like the quiet after an argument that changed something, even if no one can name exactly what. Sunny turns toward the camera, then back to Johnny. Her voice is composed, but there's a gravity to it that wasn't there before. "This conversation," she says, "won't end here." Johnny nods. They never do. The audience exhales softly, some clapping, others simply watching. The segment closes without fireworks. No shouting. No viral outburst. Just unresolved tension and unanswered questions. Arguably the most dangerous kind of television. As the cameras cut away, the studio doesn't immediately erupt into chatter the way it usually does. There's a pause. A few people remain seated, processing. Johnny stands, exchanging polite nods with the hosts. Sunny meets his eyes one last time, not as an opponent, not as an ally, but as someone who recognizes the weight of what just happened. And then he walks off stage. But the moment doesn't leave with him. Within minutes, clips flood social media. Not the loudest exchanges, but the quiet ones. The pauses. The lines spoken without raised voices. Calm doesn't equal guilty. Trauma doesn't owe anyone a timeline. Restraint isn't silence. Twitter fractures instantly. One side calls it masterful, measured, dignified, devastating in its restraint. Another calls it manipulative, too polished, too careful, a performance disguised as vulnerability. Think pieces begin drafting themselves before the show even finishes airing on the West Coast. On TikTok, a slowed-down clip of Johnny pausing before answering goes viral, text layered over it. "This is what being misunderstood looks like." Another creator stitches it with a rebuttal. "This is what power looks like." The divide deepens. Entertainment blogs run split headlines. One reads, "Johnny Depp silences the room with calm precision." Another counters, "The View confrontation raises hard questions about accountability." Sunny's name trends too. Some praise her for pressing where others wouldn't. Some accuse her of pushing too far. Others say she didn't push enough. Her calm scrutiny becomes a mirror, reflecting whatever the viewer already believed. Back in the quiet of his car, Johnny stares out the window as the city passes by in blurs of light. His phone buzzes relentlessly, untouched. He doesn't need to read the reactions to know them. He's lived this cycle before. What lingers with him isn't Sunny's sharpest question. It's the silence afterward. The way the room listened. The way no one won. And somewhere else, in living rooms and comment sections, viewers replay the exchange, arguing with strangers, arguing with themselves. Some feel seen. Some feel angered. Some feel unsettled, and can't explain why. That's the power of calm delivered with sharp words. It doesn't demand agreement. It demands thought. Now it's your turn. What did you hear in that silence? Was Johnny's restraint honesty, or strategy? Was Sunny's pressure necessary, or excessive? Drop your opinion in the comments below. We want to know where you stand. And if you want more cinematic, intense, emotionally charged stories that pull you inside the moment and leave you thinking long after the screen goes dark, subscribe to the Narration Show right now. Like this video, share it with someone who loves real tension and real conversation. And stay with us, because the next story might be even more explosive.